I decided I was going to take my life. I was like drinking at the same time. So at this point I was about to be blacked out drunk and was like, okay, if I can get drunk enough, I can do this. And so at this point I'm like kind of in and out of remembering really what happened. And so I ended up waking up in the hospital. So pretty much blacked out, woke up in the hospital. Yeah. The next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital. I find out like my supervisor and my commander from the military was there. And once things kind of calmed down, like at this point, they wanted me to get committed to an insane asylum at this point. Like, I'm just completely out of my mind. Like I'm lost. I'm completely lost. There's no faith. There's no presence of God that I knew of until they took me home later that day. And they showed me that I did shoot a gun into the ceiling.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Andrew Ramon Show. I'm so pumped about this conversation. I have the chance to sit down with hip hop artist D.Cure. We're going to talk about his music, talk about his faith, and get to know him. He is a leader in the conservative movement and has really seen a lot of success in the grassroots kind of hip hop movement as well. So I'm super excited. So without further ado, D.Cure, welcome to the show.
So much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No, it truly is an honor. And well, D.Cure, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your story, and we'd love to get to know you a little bit more.
Of course. So, man, I started rapping when I was like 16 years old. I was just a little kid from Arizona. Originally, I got into music. My parents were in the Army band. And so they were like, well, our kids should play music. And so they had us all, me and my three brothers, all pick an instrument. And so I played trumpet from about 9 years old up until I was 16. And I was like, what am I going to do with the trumpet? And I always loved hip hop. You know, I grew up listening to hip hop probably from about 11 or 12. I started getting into it. And just my love grew over the years until I was like, well, I think I'm just going to try to rap. And so I started writing in high school. I was big into like Lauryn Hill because I grew up in church, obviously. And, you know, there was that movie Sister Act too, where she was in and she was singing in that movie. And then I found out she could rap too. And so I got into her album at a young age and I was like, man, this is super good. And that was kind of, so that was kind of the start. Graduated high school, then joined the Air Force and kind of fell out of music. I mean, I was making music, but you know, I didn't have the focus like I do now. But I did 11 years in the Air Force. And once I got out, I was like, okay, it's time. Like I got to follow this passion. I was 29 at the time. And I was like, man, I've wasted a lot of time not pursuing music. And that's kind of like when it all really truly began.
Okay, that's when it all truly began after you came back. And first of all, thank you for your service. 11 years.
Thank you.
That's quite some time. And you said that was in the Air Force branch?
Yeah, I was in the Air Force. I was in security forces, which is basically like military police. And so I did that for 11 long years, a couple deployments, and
Okay. Wow. That's all. I'm sure there's a lot of stories to go there as well.
For sure.
And so you came back and now you started, you decided to really pursue your music more head on, because previously to that, you had some exposure to it. And now where you are now, you're publishing music, you're on Spotify, you're in all the platforms, you're a leading voice in kind of I would say the grassroots kind of hip hop movement, especially on the conservative side of politics. But really, like, how did you're coming out of the Air Force? Walk us through it. How did you now get into the music business?
Well, luckily I took a music business course while I was in the Air Force that kind of like guided me. So figuring out all those, the distribution side, getting into, how do I get my music on Spotify and, the simple stuff. So I was lucky enough. I took a course before I got out that kind of helped me get my foot in the door that way. And then there was a community called Cypher Circuit. And basically it was just a platform of hip hop artists. They would post like an industry beat, like a famous beat, like 50 Cent in the club beat. And then you go write your verse and rap to it and post it on Instagram. And it was kind of like this big community. Yeah. And so that was originally how I met Topher. And so that was probably like 2017. I had been working for some time with the fire department, but kind of like trying to figure out, like, can I do music full time? And so I got involved in this community kind of in my free time. And Topher reached out at one point and he was like, this dude's pretty good, so I'm going to reach out to him. And we did a song, I think it was in 2017. And that was kind of like the beginning of kind of like the launch of our group now. And so kind of growing and evolving and working, being a part of that community helped so much because I was writing a new verse every week, if not more. And that just kind of helped me to get better and better. I probably did that for a good couple of years, making sure that I stayed sharp, as far as lyrical. Yeah. And so that was a big help for sure, was just staying consistent and working hard. And then I want to say there was a verse that I actually did for that group Cypher Circuit that TMR, the Marine rapper, ended up sharing on one of his pages. And then that ended up starting another relationship. And then it was like the three of us came together at that point. So me and TMR did a project. Yeah. So we did a project called Box Fort. And that verse that I did that he shared actually ended up becoming a full track called Lifeless. And it kind of just talks about our experiences in the military and how sometimes we struggle with depression and stuff. And so yeah, that was kind of like another start, which was really cool. Years later, man, I don't know when this was, 2018 or 2019, we all ended up meeting in California for the first time. And by this point we were, kind of like a group. And so obviously we had our own separate like solo music,
I guess. Solo. Right.
Yeah. So we were doing that, but also we were growing as a group. And when we met up in California for that first time, we shot a music video, and that was for our song Galaxy. And that was our first music video, which was pretty awesome. And
yeah, I remember listening to that. That's pretty dope. It's pretty dope.
Thanks.
So, and what's the name of when you guys come together? What's kind of the name of your group?
Space Force. Yeah. So
I love it.
We decided, since we have the Marine rapper and Topher and myself were both in the Air Force, we were going to come together as Space Force. That's when the new branch kind of came out.
Yeah.
They had like the Netflix show Space Force. So it was around that time, and it was like perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, thank you for kind of sharing that journey. And, I always love asking because, you're quite the master at your art. And I think a lot of people, this podcast is really targeted for, anyone listens, but young adults and youth who we all have a passion, right? We all have a passion we want to work at. And sometimes we can feel like, well, I just have to have the natural gifting and that's it. But I hear a lot of hard work coming from your side. Was there ever a time when it was just like you kind of wanted to give up music, or it was just difficult to even press through?
Absolutely. I would say most of my story is hard work. When I was a kid, I didn't have a gift for rapping. I think I had the right influence. Like I listened to good artists that kind of helped me create my own sound. But as far as like being born with a gift, I certainly didn't have that. So yeah, even when I started and, I joined the Air Force, I was still creating music. And so that was still like many years of finding my sound, like working through like, okay, this isn't really my sound, or I was going through a tough time in life and I had like a real depressing sound. And my music was, probably would drag people down instead of try to lift them up. So there's just phases of life that you have to live through. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't just go out and make a hit song without being kind of living in a dark place for some time. And so that was kind of what helped me find my sound, was just kind of living through tough moments. And that shaped and helped me figure out who I was as an artist. But yeah, hard work is definitely the way to go.
Man, I mean, I can tell because obviously you're seeing a lot of success right now. And like you say, that's a combination of obviously you have talent, but you've put so much hard work behind your talent to really then see success. Because every time, I interview folks when I'm doing this series called Success Stories, where I interview folks like yourself or like Topher and others that are seeing success in what they're doing. They're people like myself and others, but they've put hard work and they're making a difference in what they're doing. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, you can take as much time as you want, is the inspiration behind your music. I hear a lot of faith undertones in your music. You talk a lot about God and all that. Tell us a little bit about your own faith journey. You said you've had some rough moments in your life, but if you don't mind sharing, tell us a little bit about your own faith journey.
Yeah. So for me, I was raised in the church. I grew up to believe in Jesus, but there was a point in my life when I was like, I kept hearing, you need to be saved. And as a kid, you don't really know what that means. You're just like, right. Okay, I need to be saved. What do I need to be saved from? And so I guess at that point in my life, it was like my mission to go see what the world had in store for me. And so I when I joined the Air Force, I kind of got lost and I didn't really keep a strong sense of faith and kind of got lost. I actually ended up becoming an alcoholic over the years. Wow. And so, yeah, that was really bad for me as far as like relationships go, just really finding those dark places, seeing what the world had. And it was nothing close to what God had for me. I had been divorced twice. I had struggled with drinking and driving. I had a couple of DUI charges. I was just at the lowest point of my life. Yeah. And so I was just at this point, I was so embarrassed and so ashamed of who I was. I was pushing anyone out, anyone that tried to get close to me. I wasn't having it. And really how bad of a drunk I was, there was like, I felt no hope in that moment.
Oh my gosh.
And so back in 2015, I decided I was going to take my life. I was like drinking at the same time. So at this point I was about to be blacked out drunk and was like, okay, if I can get drunk enough, I can do this. And so at this point I'm like kind of in and out of remembering really what happened. And so I ended up waking up in the hospital. So pretty much blacked out, woke up in the hospital. At one point I was on the line, I guess, with the suicide hotline. I was talking to an old friend that was like, hey, I think you should really see about calling someone that can get you help right now, because they weren't even nearby. They were in a different state, so they couldn't come help. And so, yeah, the next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital. I find out like my supervisor and my commander from the military was there. And once things kind of calmed down, like at this point, they wanted me to get committed to an insane asylum at this point. Like, I'm just completely out of my mind. Like I'm lost. I'm completely lost. There's no faith. There's no presence of God that I knew of until they took me home later that day. And they showed me that I did shoot a gun into the ceiling. I must have pulled it away from my head.
Gosh.
And at that moment, it was like, okay, God still, after over a decade of really, I would still pray and I still had like an idea that maybe he was there, but I hadn't gone to church in so long, but
yeah,
it showed me that even after all that time of not following him and not listening to his word or, trying to have some relationship, he was still looking out for me after all this time. And it really changed. Yeah. It really changed my life in that moment, because it was dark and I was in a bad spot, but from that point, my life completely changed. So the Air Force was nice enough to help me out. They sent me to rehab and I did 28 days there in San Antonio, Texas. And then got sober.
Wow.
That was like the big wake up call that it took, because I had tried before, but I never could. And so that was like the big wake up call. Like, okay, if I keep drinking, I'm not going to be here anymore. So I got sober, and then at that point, I met my who's my wife now. I met her like 9 months after that, and it was just like signs of showing me that God was still looking out for me.
Wow.
So I met her, and then there were like things that was happening with the music. And the longer I stayed sober, the better my life got. And so, yeah, it just goes to show, I mean, yeah.
That is incredible. I mean, what an incredible story of God's redemption. I mean, I see you now, and I would have never thought anything of the last, 5-6 minutes of what you shared. And I mean, I want to confirm that. I mean, that is God's redemption on your life. That's His grace, and how He took you, out from such a desperation, saved your life, and then now has you here. That is incredible. Thank you for sharing. And I hope that everyone listening can resonate. Maybe you do, for those listening, maybe you do find yourself in such a dark moment when you've even thought about taking your own life, or you've even thought about, not having enough hope to live the next day. Or maybe you're not in such a dark moment, but you still feel alone and all that. And this is such a testament of what D.Cure sharing with us, that you're never too far gone. You're never too alone for God to reach you and redeem you. And, I'm curious to ask, you mentioned really in the last 5 years, God has now been restoring. I mean, if you could look back, I'm asking this question really because I think it happens when we're young, as young adults and as youth. There's a saying called live and learn, right? You just live and you learn, and no matter what, where I'm like, well, I think sometimes we can learn from those who've lived. We don't necessarily have to go through everything. Like we can listen and we can learn. I mean, are there some things that now looking back, you wish you would have done differently, or wish someone could have told you earlier?
Well, I guess to know that alcoholism ran in my family, I think would have been a helpful thing to know. That was definitely one thing that I think that could have helped me. But at the same time, that was like a journey God needed me to walk through so that I could have a story for people to hear. So, I mean, that's one thing that kind of stays in the back of my head. Like, what would have happened if I had known, how bad this could be, if I let it progress to the point that it did. But as far as like living and learning, man, that's so tough. I think to believe that God really loves you is so important, and to know, even if you can't feel it, because man, if my story doesn't tell you that God cares about people and loves us, I'm not sure what will, but I think it's important. And that's kind of like going back to what you say, you can learn from those who have lived. And that's why I like to share those stories so people can relate to them, because I did have to live in dark places for many, many years, and I certainly don't want anyone else to. And so that's why I like to be so transparent about my struggles and, the dark places that I had to be. But also to let people know that they can be saved from, from where they are. So,
wow. Well, thank you. It's inspirational. It's encouraging. And really, I guess this answers the question of what inspires your music. You have a song, which I think even Topher mentioned in your latest album, called He Is With Me, talking about God being with us and how that even saved someone's life who was thinking about taking their own life. Obviously faith is a great inspiration. What else has become an inspiration for the music that you create? What do you draw from when you write a new verse or so?
Honestly, I just like to share stories that I think people could take something from. I love to help people. It's hard to help every person. I try to respond to DMs and people that are struggling. I try to reach out to people, but really that's like the biggest inspiration for me is to help others. I mean, we like to serve people. We care about seeing other people do well and live good lives. And there's no better gift that I get from making music than hearing I've helped somebody. So, I mean, that's obviously it's hard to like sit down and write a song and say, will this help somebody? But anything personal, I like to tell personal stories about my life because there are many, like I said, there was that over 10-year span where I was really struggling and found many, many dark moments. And so I have plenty to choose from over the years that I can share. And so that's really where I go, because I know I was in such a bad place, but God kind of used that to help me grow and become someone that can reach other people. So that's,
I love that. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing it. And really, when I'm hearing your story, I'm hearing the success that you're experiencing, the success that not only success as in like, oh, well, how many people listen to you, but really like the impact that you're making in people's lives, right? And I wanted to ask you now, this might be a tough question, so you can think about it as I talk, but really, if you could like break down or sum up some of the key maybe moments or key things in the success that you've experienced, maybe it's in your music, in your music journey or your faith journey, really, because I know a lot of young adults or youth, as they're growing up, the world is telling them, well, success just looks like money, it looks like fame, and no matter the cost or no matter what you compromise, right? But I wanted to get your perspective. How would you break down or sum up some of the keys of the success you've experienced?
For me, honestly, it was just deciding that if I wanted to be a hip hop artist, I had to work harder than every other hip hop artist. If you want to be, work in real estate, you have to work harder than every other person trying to get into real estate. So that was like having the discipline to go back and write, a verse every week or every day, even. That's if that's what it takes, then, that's what you have to do. So it's really about having the discipline, believing that what you're doing is what you're meant to do. That was, that's hard for anybody, to say like, is this what I'm meant to do? Even today, I'm still like, am I supposed to really be rapping and trying to like tell stories? So it can be discouraging to anybody, but deep down, we all believe there's something that we're supposed to be doing. I feel like people are meant to serve others, and if you can't feel like you're helping others in what you're doing, you might need to look at doing something else. So yeah, I would say having that discipline and working harder than everyone out there that's, trying to do the same or similar things as you're doing, and just having that deep belief in what you're doing. If you go to work and you're, working at some job and you don't believe in the purpose and kind of like what's behind it, then it's going to be hard to be successful and see joy in that. So having that belief, is super big, because even when I was terrible at rapping, which I was for probably 5 to 10 years, I was still like, man, there's a reason I'm doing this. There's a reason I've been writing verses while I've filled 100 notebooks full of lyrics and stuff. And there's obviously a part of life that we have to go through to evolve and find out what that is. But if you're working hard, you're going to find out what that thing is. I know a kid that is 16 years old that has a bigger following than me in doing music and hip hop. And he's super talented because he believed, and he had people behind him that believed in him that really can just push you. So yeah, having that belief, obviously good people in your corner always helps. I mean, having TMR and Topher in my corner is huge. They believe in me every day. So having a team, I mean, man, I should have wrote a list.
Well, man, I'm like, you're writing down the list, having a team, believing in what you're doing, working hard, serving others. I love that. Something I want to highlight of what you mentioned, you even said, you're like, man, when I was bad at rapping for 5-10 years, man, that I think you're being too generous with yourself, because I feel like we can get so discouraged so quickly. I mean, it's like learning anything, but maybe to your point, I feel like what you're saying is like, hey, even if you suck the first year or the first 2 years or something, but you believe in what you're doing, like keep working at it, keep going at it, because then little by little, I mean, you're going to see the fruit, right? The more you plant, the more you're going to harvest into it. That's what I'm seeing right now. I mean, with you, man, if you say you suck for 5-10 years, man, I'm giving up too quickly on my stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people look for like the big sign in the sky that says you're supposed to do this, but at the end of the day, we all have something we're passionate about. We all like feel something that we're pulled toward. And that's really what you're looking for. If you're pulled in a certain direction in life to do something, maybe that's the big sign in the sky. You know, I think we all want this grand thing to happen. It really just doesn't. I was just thinking about, I'm saying that, but I'm also thinking like there was that moment of clarity when I was saved, in that moment of trying to like take my life, where I knew that was pulling me away from alcohol. Maybe that wasn't like a calling for me, like, oh, I'm supposed to be rapping. But knowing that I was pulled away from drinking was huge. And that like helped me to be able to do the things that I wanted to do. And so there are definitely moments in life where you're pulled in these directions by God, or, you know, whatever you believe in. I think that really should shape, you know, the direction you go. But yes, so
absolutely.
I would say if I was just going to say, like, if you're feeling a certain way deep down, I think we all know, that's kind of like where the calling is, you know, if you feel something in your heart, go for it. Go for it. I mean, what do you have to lose?
Exactly. just go for it. I love that. And it's been super encouraging, honestly, D.Cure, just your time with us, especially for me. I mean, this is the first time we're meeting, the first time I'm hearing your story and everything, which this is why I love doing these interviews, because I don't know, I think I'm the one who enjoys it the most, and I'm the one who learns the most, because I get to hear all these amazing stories and really just inspiring things. And I think for everyone listening, there's 5-6 things we can all grab from your story, and not only like your story as in just your dark moments, but now, I mean, what God's doing in your life right now and how He's redeemed you. And well, I wanted to ask before we even try to land this plane is, how can people get connected with your art? How can people get connected with you?
All right. So you can find me on Instagram at Andrew Raps. That's not Andre Raps. I get that one a lot. You can find me on TikTok at Bearded Rapper. My website is dcurehiphop.com. That's DCURE hiphop.com. You can find me on Twitter at Who is D.Cure? Maybe. Oh man, I got too many different. Is
that a legit question?
Tags.
Who is?
Yeah, but probably the easiest, the one I'm on the most is Instagram at Andrew Raps, or you can even search D.Cure for D.Cure, and you'll find me there for sure.
Oh, that's perfect. Hey, well, I'll give it a follow. And for everyone listening, definitely, listen to his music on Spotify, Apple Music, all the platforms available to that. But D.Cure, man, I wanted to thank you for jumping on the show. Thank you for taking the time and being so vulnerable with your story. I think that speaks volumes, with people, especially when folks just hear me talk all the time and they're tired of my voice. But hey, you're hearing another Andrew, okay? It's not a coincidence. His name is also Andrew, the best name. Go. Maybe I'm biased, but I do think it's the best name.
It's a great name for sure. Hey, thanks again for having me. It's been a pleasure to share a bit of my story, and thank you for doing what you're doing, man. Bringing young people to the message and to seeing what life truly can be is awesome. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure having you. And guys, thank you for listening to another episode of The Andrew Roman Show. We're going to continue with our success stories. We're going to continue with different episodes, so you don't want to miss the next one. We'll see you in The Andrew Roman Show. We'll see you then.